Hello, everybody, and welcome to this lesson on Kabbalistic meditation techniques. This is lesson number 3. What we're going to do in this lesson is we're going to have an introduction to the word Hitbodedut, which is the word for meditation, or that we translate as meditation. And also we're going to do some overview of each of the techniques that we're going to be discussing during this part of this lesson and also during the next lesson. And these are going to be the terms Hitbodedut, Hitnaveh, Zamar, Hagah, and Hitbonenut. Specifically, what we're going to do is we're going to explain, go over them really quick, and then we're going to go in depth on what each of these techniques of Kabbalistic meditation are all about. And also we're going to go into some practical guide as well. So I hope that you stay with us throughout the whole lesson, because it gets better at the end. We're going to be not only talking about Hitbodedut, Hitnaveh, Zamar, Hagah, and Hitbonenut, but we're going to have also some notes that you can take on how to practice, practical information on how to practice each of these techniques. So I hope to see you after the introduction so we can start our lesson on Kabbalistic meditation techniques. Welcome back. As we mentioned in the introduction, we are going to be talking about Hitbodedut, Hitnaveh, Zamar, Hagah, and Hitbonenut. These are Kabbalistic techniques of meditations. Some of these meditations are not practiced openly in some of the Kabbalistic schools. Some of the techniques has been forgotten because of the lack of practice and the emphasis in other things within the Kabbalistic circles. But in this lesson, we're going to spend some time talking about Hitbodedut. And Hitbodedut is basically the word that means the one who isolates himself or herself. And this is the word that is used in order to describe a meditator, a person that meditates and using these techniques or other techniques in what is called, the world of Kabbalah, right? And let's start by talking about Hitbodedut. That way we can have an idea of what this is all about, right? So Hitbodedut, like I said before, it's a word that describes basically the meditator, Hitbodedut. And Hitbodedut is a Hebrew word that means one who isolates themselves, or a person in solitude. It comes from the root badad, and badad means alone, means to be isolated. In Jewish and spiritual practice, especially in Kabbalah, Hitbodedut often refers to someone who engaged in Hitbodedut. And we're going to be talking about Hitbodedut. Hitbodedut is a technique, a meditative technique of introspection practice, self-seclusion and direct personal dialogue with God. And we're going to talk about it, we're going to describe it, and we're going to talk about what you need to do. Now, let's talk more about Hitbodedut, about this word that describes basically the meditator, the person that isolates himself or herself. One thing that we need to understand is that when we talk about isolation, we're not talking only about isolating ourselves from physical things. For example, isolating ourselves from society for a while, isolating ourselves from our family, for a while in order to practice meditation. It also involves isolating ourselves from our own selfish thoughts and desires. So it goes deeper than just isolating ourselves from or disconnecting from external distractions. So a person that practices Hitbodedut seeks to disconnect from external distraction, and they try to focus inward. They reflect on their spiritual state, emotions, and relationship with God. And this can involve prayer, meditation, or simply being alone in one's thought in a quiet setting. Things that are associated with Hitbodedut, with meditation, is the practice of Hitbodedut, which we're going to explain, like I said, in more depth. This technique of meditation was popularized by Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, and basically what this meditation involves is an unscripted personal conversations with God, and it's often allowed in a secluded space like the forest, a quiet room, or any place in nature. Most Kabbalists, at least the ones that I have contact with, they like to go into the forest. But if you go into the Torah and the whole Tanakh, you're gonna see that the seclusion is not only in the forest; it's also in the wilderness, right? The desert and places like that, in order to find God. We got examples like Moshe and others that did that. Now, a Hitbodedut, a meditator, might pour out their heart to God when they're doing the Hitbodedut, expressing gratitude, talking about the struggles, desires, or just simply seeking guidance. Okay. Also, the Hitbodedut, the person meditates in order to find spiritual growth by stepping away from the noise of daily life. The Hitbodedut creates a space to connect deeply with their inner self and the divine. In this way, they foster clarity and self-awareness and spiritual elevation, something that you cannot have if you are in a place that you're too distracted, things, noises, things happening, and all that all around you. Now, there's biblical and rabbinic roots to this type of to this practice of meditation. A lot of people think that because we are not, as Kabbalists and as people that follow probably Judaism, if you follow Judaism, or even if you follow other religion like Christianity and things like that, you think that the Bible doesn't talk about meditation, that the Bible is not doesn't give us any hint that ancient Israelites or modern Israelites meditate, and it does. It does. For example, the concept of isolation for spiritual purposes is rooted in the life of the prophets and sages, who often were trying to find solitude to connect with God. And like I said, the biggest example that we have is Moshe ascending to Mount Sinai, or the prophet Elijah retreating to the cave on Mount Horeb, in which we see these two big examples of self-imposed solitude in order to have divine communication. So we do have that. And also we're going to see, as when we touch the method of meditation that involves singing and music, we're going to see this also, that there's an example in the Bible in which we're gonna see King Saul basically dancing to the music of a group of prophets, and he even himself was prophesying. So things like that we're going to be seeing in the Tanakh, in the Bible, and we're going to see these practices are kind of like weird in a sense, but it's because anything that has to do with prophecy was always seen, kind of different and weird. Now, in modern days, modern application of the Hitbodedut is it's because we're in a busy life, right? We try to do this in a daily, like a daily practice as much as we can. We try to retreat, ourselves sometimes, from everything, meaning involving also getting rid of our cell phone and things like that, right? And in modern times, the meditation of mindfulness has become very popularized. We try to apply that as well because that's something that is part of being a Kabbalist who try to bring the inner light, the upper light into our inner being. So what we do is we set aside time each day for solitude and reflection, even for a few minutes, to speak to God and contemplate life's purpose. Sometimes we can go on retreat or spending time in nature to focus our spiritual matters away from distractions of everyday life. Also, we adapted practice of Hitbodedut into modern mindfulness techniques, focusing on the present moment and one's connection with God. So we go, we express our heart out to God, and then we focus on that moment, right? And try to enjoy, to have that connection with God in a way that it's very in a conscious way. Let's put it that way. Now, a person that meditates, Hitbodedut, can also be referred into a more broad way to anyone who seeks solitude for personal reflection. This can be whether or not it involves explicitly spiritual activities. It's a practice of pausing, stepping back from the busyness of life, and allowing ourselves to be in a space to think, feel, and grow. When we incorporate the practice of being a Hitbodedut, a meditator, we can bring clarity, inner peace, and stronger spiritual connection to ourselves. So in order to do this, we need to know how we're going to do this, right? If there's any description of practices that we can apply into our modern life. One of the mistakes that we make when we're studying scripture is that we only think that these practices are ancient and they're not practiced anymore. That was back then, that God only talked to the prophets back then, that God doesn't talk to us the way he used to talk back then. And remember, God is constantly revealing himself to all of us. We just need to quiet down and listen, okay? So the first thing that we need to do is to choose a quiet, secluded space, okay? In order to be in or to create what we call basically not only a physical environment but also a psychological environment in which we can be quiet, we need to find a place where you can be alone without distraction. This could be a quiet room in your home, a park, the forest as we mentioned before, or a natural setting. Even your car can be that secluded space, or a corner during a break at work. The goal is to create physical and mental space where you feel safe and free to reflect. You have to make sure that there will be no distractions, okay? The other thing that you need to make sure is that you need to create a habit. So set aside time regularly. You can start with small amount of times, dedicate 5 to 10 minutes daily, gradually increasing the time as you become more comfortable. Consistency, if you're consistent, right? Consistency is the key. Establish a regular time, early morning, during a lunch break, or in the evening. But make sure that you are consistent, that you create a habit. The other thing, the next step that you're going to do is once you have the space and the time, now you need to make sure that you practice Hitbodedut, which is talking to God freely. So speak aloud as if talking to a close friend. Remember, Rabbi Nachman of Breslov emphasized that Hitbodedut should be natural and unscripted. So think, what is it that you're going to be talking about to God during that time? You can use gratitude. You can talk about struggles. You can talk about maybe request, reflection. Just make sure you know that these things are things that are not selfish, okay? So gratitude, thank God for specific blessings in your life, about the struggles, share your worries, fears, and challenges. And then when you do a request, make sure the request is like for guidance, strength, and clarity about these worries and fears and challenges that you're facing, right? And then reflection, discuss your dreams, goals, your moral and spiritual growth, and just listen, right? A good example to do during this time, when you're practicing gratitude, is you can say this: God, thank you for helping me through my challenges today. I feel uncertain about my next steps at work. Please guide me to make wise decisions. Okay? Remember, don't ask. This is not a prayer. We're going to be talking about prayer in other lessons, because prayer is also a Kabbalistic meditation technique. But prayer is not a request that you need to make to God, and God has to comply to your request. The real request, the real prayer, is a prayer in which you're asking God for guidance, strength, and clarity, in which you don't ask for the whatever is happening in your life to be changed, because it's not going to change anyways. If He came to you, it's because you have to go through it. But you need to ask God for strength, for clarity, or for guidance, so you can go through that part of your life in a more conscious way, in which you can use that moment of struggle or happiness or whatever you're going through, and use it to grow spiritually, okay? And then, like I said, make sure you listen, reflect silently. After speaking, sit in silence and listen. Pay attention to thoughts, feelings, or inspirations that arise during that moment. You don't need to have the answers right away. Sometimes the act of quiet reflection is the answer, right? Sometimes it's just that we're thinking too much and we need just to quiet down our mind, and that's the answer right there. That you need to be, as my son and daughter would say, that we need to chill. We need to take it easy. We need to stop and cool down a little bit, and then we're gonna see things clear, okay? And something that I advise people is to make sure you write down your thoughts, okay? Keep a journal to record your reflections, your prayers, your insights during the time of your Hitbodedut sessions. Writing can help you track your spiritual journey and recognize patterns over time, and also it's a way to measure how much you're advancing or how things are changing in your life, okay? Also, incorporate in your meditations psalms or verses from the Tanakh or from the Bible. If you're unsure how to start, use a psalm or a meaningful verse as a prompt. For example, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, right? From Psalm 23, verse 1. Or Psalm 130, verse 1, in which, from the depth I call to you, O Lord. And from there, you can express what you need, or express what you feel, or express your gratitude. Reflect on what the verse means to you and let it inspire your connection, your talk with the Creator, okay? Incorporate nature when you're doing your meditation. Spending time in nature enhances the experience of solitude. The beauty of creation can inspire awe and gratitude. Make sure you walk slowly, observe your surroundings, and feel the presence of God in the natural world. And this is very important because while we walk or while we're sitting on a park and we're enjoying a listening, uh, for example, I remember one day I was in the park with my kids, and I remember listening to the breeze hitting the leaves of the tree from far away, coming like a wave until it got to us, and you can feel it louder. And just that is some kind of a soothing sound. It's white noise, right? A soothing sound that relaxes you. It's a soothing sound, the sound of wind, right? Remember, we have ruach, the breath of God, so that can inspire you to feel that way, that the breath of God, right, is within you. And make sure you incorporate nature, see creation as it is. It's the biggest uh, environment, spiritual environment that we live. It's not only a physical environment, it's a spiritual environment. It's where we're practicing what we're learning. It's all laboratory, right? And this time is a time to not only connect with nature, but also connect with our own inner nature, that we're part of this. We see the ground as a mineral. We see the trees as the vegetable. We see the birds as the animal, right? And we are the human level in that picture, right? In that environment. Practice nonverbal reflection. If you're not comfortable speaking aloud, meditate in silence. Focus on your breath and works. Word that actually works is uh, saying to yourself shalom. Or as in modern times, when you hear some teachers of Kabbalah teaching meditation, they talk about imagining a light surrounding you, coming through the crown of your head and entering your body and surrounding you. An image of this light of peace surrounding you. And one thing that is very important is to be honest. Don't censor yourself. Whether you're expressing joy, anger, sadness, or confusion, at that moment, the Creator will welcome all the emotions. The more authentic you are, the more healing and meaningful this practice is going to become. So make sure you are honest and that you're saying what you feel. That is a moment in which you're talking to the Creator like if He was physically there as your best friend, okay? We're not supposed to create images, right, of the Creator, but at that moment, it's like if He was there and as your friend, listening to whatever you need to say without judgment, okay? Also, build spiritual awareness in daily life. The lessons and insights that you gain during the Hitbodedut session can influence your day-to-day actions. So you don't need to wait for that moment of Hitbodedut in order to practice some kind of conscious action or small meditation, right? You can do it by everyday things that you're doing, making them spiritual. Practice gratitude for small blessings in your life. For example, it is said in Judaism and Kabbalah that you need to say at least more than 100 blessings a day. That's a form of meditation. That's a form of making your whole life, every movement that you do, everything, drinking tea or anything like that, you make a blessing for it. You're eating, you make a blessing for it, and then you practice mindfulness in these environments by doing that. Uh, Also, that helps you to take decisions that are based on real ethics and spiritual growth. So it's a way to be conscious of every action, to be in the moment all the time, and to be connected with the Creator and knowing that everything that we have is basically the light of the Creator coming to us and giving us these special moments, whether we feel good or bad about them. Okay, so remember, find a space, go to a quiet area, place, walk in the park. Start with gratitude, right? Speak from the heart, be honest, listen, reflect, in silence, and then close the meditation with an intention. For example, you can ask at that moment that for you to be basically, as you receive this light of peace, for you to receive this light of peace and connection and use it throughout the whole day, and to share with other people and make that intention the intention of your day after the meditation. Okay. So this is a meditation that is not only in that moment, but it extends beyond the moment. Okay. And it's the Hitbodedut, the person that meditates, the meditator, right? It's a person that is aware, is conscious. And that awareness and that consciousness is gained or attained as we practice every day. Okay. So let's recap, what we were talking about, how to practice Hitbodedut. Choose a quiet, secluded space. Second, set aside time regularly. The third one is talk to God. Be honest about it, right? Reflect silently. Write down your thoughts in a journal. If you don't know how to start, make sure you use Psalms or verses from the Bible. Incorporate in your meditations nature. Practice nonverbal reflection. Remember to be honest about what you are talking to the Creator. And build spiritual awareness in daily life, okay, by practicing gratitude for small blessings that you receive. Okay, now if you have not this if this concept is not clear, make sure you go back to the beginning of this video and go over again, because now we're going to be talking about an overview of the concepts that we're going to be discussing in part of this video and also in the next video. And it's the concept of Hitbodedut, Hitnaveh, Zamar, Hagah, and Hitbonenut. Okay? So the terms Hitbodedut, Hitnaveh, go back here, Hitnaveh, Zamar, Hagah, and Hitbonenut, they come from the Hebrew and are often associated with spiritual practices, worship, and states of being. And what we're going to do is we're going to explore them in a superficial way, and then we're going to go back to each one of them and study them in depth. And then we're going to, just like we did with the with the word about the meditator, right? We're going to then see what steps we need to make, or what are the guidelines in order to practice each of these techniques. So let's start with the first one, which is Hitbodedut. Hitbodedut comes from the word boded, which means alone or solitude. It sounds familiar, right? Hitbodedut refers to the practice of secluded meditation or prayer. It is a technique that is used by the Hitbodedut. The Hitbodedut, we talk about it, right? Hitbodedut means meditator, the one who isolates themselves, right? And here we're talking about Hitbodedut, and that's a practice that the Hitbodedut does, that the meditator does. And in Kabbalah, especially in the teachings of Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, it emphasizes impersonal, intimate conversations with God in a private setting, often in the setting of nature. And the purpose of this technique is to have deep personal connection with the divine, to have introspection and self-reflection. That's the first technique. Now, the next technique that we're going to be covering in these lessons is the Hitnaveh. So Hitnaveh comes from the root word Navi, which means prophet. Hitnaveh refers to the act of prophesying or experiencing prophetic inspirations. This term is associated with biblical prophets who spoke words of divine revelation, often in a state of spiritual ecstasy or divine connection. The purpose of this technique is to convey messages from God and express them, or for these messages to be expressed in profound spiritual insights. One thing that we're going to see is the light that is working through the person that is receiving this message, but this message doesn't have a language, and it's the work of the prophet to convert that information into human language. But there is a problem. It has to go through the personality of the prophet, so it's going to be language that is going to come with some personality of the person that receives the message. All right. The next technique is Zamar. Zamar comes from the root Zamar, which means to sing or to praise. Zamar is associated with singing and playing music as an act of worship. Frequently, this is found in the Psalms, and it reflects joy and devotion expressed through music and songs, often as communal worship. Praising and glorifying God, uplifting the spirit, and creating communal harmony is the purpose of this type of technique. So we're going to see examples of that, and all these techniques, we're going to see modern examples of how we can practice this. Now, the next technique is Hagah. Hagah is rooted in Hagah, meaning to meditate, to utter, to murmur. Hagah describes a meditative process of repeating words softly, such as scripture or prayer. In the context, it's found in the Bible, especially in verses like Joshua chapter 1, verse 8, where meditating on God's words day and night is emphasized. The purpose of this technique is deep reflection on divine wisdom, internalizing scripture, and spiritual growth. And the next technique, this is a technique that actually introduced me to the Kabbalistic meditation when I was a novice, when I was just starting to study Kabbalah, and it's a concept of Hitbonenut. Hitbonenut is a term that means contemplation or reflection. It is a spiritual practice rooted in Jewish thought, particularly in the teachings of Chabad, Hasidut, a branch of Hasidic Judaism, where it is the central method of meditation and intellectual engagement with divine concepts. The meaning and root of the word Hitbonenut comes from Binah, that means understanding or insight, and Hitbonenut implies an active process of deep thought and analysis to gain profound understanding. It is not merely intellectual, it involves a meditative process that integrates mind and heart to foster spiritual awareness and connection. Now, there are key differences, right? Each practice serves distinct, yet they complement each other as well. Whether through personal introspection, communal worship, or receiving or internalizing spiritual truth, all these practices, sometimes overlap. But let's see, for example, Hitbodedut focus on solitude and personal prayer, while Hitnaveh focus on prophecy and inspiration. Zamar focus on worship through music. Hagah focus on meditation and reflection, Hitbonenut focus on contemplation. Now, Hitbodedut has a mode of practice that is about being secluded. It is unstructured, right? Because there's no structured conversation with God or prayer. It's an unstructured conversation with God. Hitnaveh, which is a prophecy, right? Practice of prophecy. The mode of practice is divine revelation or ecstatic experience. Now, Zamar, which is worship through music, right? The mode of practice is through singing and playing instruments. Hagah, which is reflection, right? It's practiced by doing soft murmuring or meditating on words. Hitbonenut is practiced by intellectual meditation. Now, going back again to Hitbodedut, the goal is to have the intimacy with the Creator, with the Divine. Hitnaveh, the goal is to share God's messages, right, through the prophecy. The Zamar is about praising and glorifying the Creator. Hagah is about, because it's reflection, right, it's about deep internalization of spiritual truths. Hitbonenut, the goal is to put our emotions and our intellect into one, to integrate them, to unite them in order to serve the Creator. Now, we're going to go back, like I mentioned, to each of these techniques, and we're going to go in depth. Okay, the first technique that we're going to be talking about is the technique of Hitbodedut. Okay, and let me put the slide here. So Hitbodedut, as we mentioned, is derived from the root boded, that means alone or solitude, right? Now, okay. So it emphasizes in solitude, like we mentioned, right? Not only physical solitude, but also emotional and spiritual solitude, in order to have introspection and connection with God. As we mentioned before, this was prominently developed and popularized by Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, who was a Hasidic master during the years 1772 and 1810. And he encouraged his followers to engage in daily Hitbodedut as a direct and personal way to connect with God. What is a practice, right? How do we practice Hitbodedut? It's typically performed in a secluded place, such as forest or field, away from distractions. It involves unstructured, heartfelt, honest conversation with God, often in one's native language. So it doesn't have to be in Hebrew, right? It can be in your own language, because at that moment you're talking to your friend, right? The Creator. So it doesn't matter which language, the Creator is going to understand everybody. We prefer in prayer and in some of meditations to use the Hebrew letters and Hebrew language, but in this case, any language, the native language of that person is important, because you need to pour out your heart. The spiritual purpose of this technique of Hitbodedut is to achieve clarity and thoughts and thought and purpose. Also, it helps us deepen one's relationship with the divine by addressing God as a personal confidant, and also help us cultivate humility and self-awareness. By doing this, you will see that you're not only talking to the Creator, you are also going inside your thoughts, inside this storm inside your brain, inside your emotions, and you will be more aware of how you think. You'll be more aware of what are your values. You'll be more aware of what is happening all around you. So it's a good practice, and that's uh, sometimes is the answer itself that the creator is going to give you. It's going to give you clarity on and awareness of what you are doing as a person, who you are as a person. And this type of technique is based on Psalm 91, verse 1, in which says, "He who dwells in secret," right? Beseter. And it means in secret. Seter means secret. You know, he who dwells in secret, in the secret place of the Most High. And this has been interpreted as the encouragement for solitary communion with the Creator. So this is basically what Kabbalists tell us that it comes. Now, Hitbodedut, as we mentioned, is a practice that involves unscripted dialogue with God in solitude. And we prefer, the forest. We prefer, places where there's nature involved. So let's go to some example of how to practice Hitbodedut. Okay? And we might, after we finish Hitbodedut, we might stop the lesson on Hitbodedut, and then we're going to go into the other techniques in the next lesson number 4, because we are going to go into each of them, like I said, and we're going to explain them, what they're all about, and we're going to give examples of how to practice it as well. One thing that is very important that I would like you to do is take notes. Take notes as you hear this video and you hear the examples of how to practice. Pause the video, write down, continue, pause the video, write down, and make sure you have that, okay? Right, so let's talk about examples of how to practice Hitbodedut. One of the practices you can do, and we mentioned this before, is gratitude practice. What is the process? Spend time thanking God for specific blessings in your life. For example, you can say, "Thank you, God, for giving me another day. Thank you for my family, my health, and the small moments of joy today." And focus on developing an attitude of gratitude by recognizing God's role in your life. Okay, this is very important. I wrote a book. It's called The Path of Blessings and Gratitude. And it's based on this path, or this kind of meditation, to be grateful for everything in our lives. I'm going to put the link in the description if you want to get the book. But it's based on this practice of gratitude. And it's very important to have that, in our lives, to be grateful for everything. In fact, having or being grateful for everything in our lives is one of the keys to ascend higher into the ladder of spirituality and get closer to the Garden of Eden, because the reason we fell from Gan Eden, as Adam did, right? We're part of his soul, is because of being ungrateful. And in the book, I explain, what was ungratefulness. Also, in this practice, another example how to practice that, is talk to God about specific challenge or decisions you're facing, right? One example, you can say, "God, I feel stuck and I don't know what to do about this job situation. Please guide me to make the right choice and give me clarity." If you see, here we're not asking for God to change the situation. We're asking God to give us clarity about the situation. and focus on expressing your vulnerability and open yourself to divine inspiration during that moment. Okay? Another way that you can practice this is by practicing teshuvah, repentance, or confession. Right? This involves on the following: reflect on your day or week, admitting mistakes to the Creator and resolving to improve yourself. One example of expressing yourself to the Creator can be, like, God, I lost my temper today. I regret it. Please help me be more patient and kind in the future, right? So here we're asking, just as before, we're not asking for the situation to change. We're asking for us, our perception of what we are living at that moment, what we're going through, right, to change. In this example, we need to focus on knowledge, or acknowledging shortcomings without self-judgment, and aiming always for growth, for that change. One of the mistakes that we make is that we judge ourselves, and that's something that sometimes don't let us change, right? When we admit that we did something wrong, a lot of people say, but you're judging yourself by saying that. We're not judging ourselves by doing that. What we're actually judging is our egoistic, nature, and we're admitting that we're vulnerable, that we need help from the upper light to be stronger and not, in this case, lose our temper, right? And then regret it, right? So this is basically, not to say I'm never going to change. That's the way I am. That's judging yourself and also being irresponsible, not taking responsibility for your actions. Another way that you can practice Hitbodedut is by sharing your feelings. You need to express emotions, whether they're joy, sadness, frustration, or excitement. An example of expressing emotions, you can say, God, I feel overwhelmed right now. It's hard to see how things will work out, but I trust you that you are with me. And then focus on cultivating a sense of intimacy with God as you're confident at that moment. When you're expressing your feelings, it's like you're talking to your mother, your father, or someone that you love, and at that moment feel like you're under their wings, you're protected, right? And even though you don't see how things are going to turn out, you know that it's going to be for your own good. Remember, God is good that does good, right? He never gonna put a situation in our lives in order to hurt us or anything like that. Everything has to do with spiritual growth. So we need to see it that way. Even though the situations are going to be hard, we're emotional beings, right? And we're going to feel pleasure in some of these things that happen in our lives, and we're going to also feel pain. Pain, we see it as bad, but the Creator doesn't see that. The Creator see, it's a situation you need to go through. Situation that all humans go through, right? Pain. And it's for a reason, for us to learn. Is it judgment? Is it some kind of chastisement, because we misbehave or anything like that? Not really. When you look behind all the inner works of everything that happened in our lives, it's because the Creator has a plan for us to advance through these situations that we go in life. Another way that you can practice Hitbodedut is by meditating on silence. We talk about speaking, right? But in this case, you sit in a quiet place and simply be with God without speaking. They say sometimes silence speaks louder than words, right? So allow your mind to settle and create a space to feel God's presence. Experience, the peace and connection that comes from that quiet communion. And sometimes that's all you need. You just want to have that moment, you and God's presence, and that's it. Also, something that I think is very healthy, not only for our mind and our body, also for our emotions, of our emotions, it helps us psychologically be more healthy. Have nature walks and conversations. Maybe somebody from far away will see you talking by yourself, and they might think you're crazy because you're talking to yourself. What they don't know is that you're talking to someone very important at that moment. So go into nature, and a nature setting, a park, forest, secluded area, even the beach, and talk to God aloud or in your heart, right? And an example could be like, God, I see your beauty in these trees. I see the beauty in these oceans. I see the beauty, let's say, in this water, the lake. Thank you for creating such a peaceful world. Help me reflect this beauty in my actions. And draw inspiration from nature as a reflection of God greatness. Okay? This meditation can be a short one or can be as long as your nature walk. Okay? But make that walk something that is meaningful. Okay? Make sure that you're having that conversation. And it's a good thing because you're involving your whole being. You're involving you're involving your body as you're walking. You're involving your breath because you have to breathe, right? As you're doing this exercise. You are involving your emotions by having all your heart being poured out. And you're involving your mind by focusing on the beauty that surrounds you. And you're involving your spiritual being because this is a spiritual technique, right? It's to connect with spirituality, to connect with the spiritual side of your being. It's also another way to practice Hitbodedut, and is free-flowing talk. This is done by setting aside time to speak to God about whatever is in your mind without structure. One example is, God, I don't know where to start. Today was hard. I don't feel close to you. Please help me feel connected again. As simple as that. And then let thoughts and words flow naturally, fostering honesty and authenticity. Okay? Don't try to be. You're talking to God. He already knows how you feel. He already knows what you need, right? But you at that moment need that flow of emotion, that flow of your heart be poured out and connect to the Creator. The Creator is already connected to you, but you need to have that conscious connection with it. Okay? So make sure you're honest and authentic. Don't use fancy words. The Creator doesn't need fancy words. You just need your honesty. Now, another way that we can practice Hitbodedut is by what is called creative expression. And this can be done by using writing, art, or music as a form of communication with God. As I mentioned before, these techniques overlap sometimes each other. So we're going to see one of the techniques have to do with singing and music, right? So here, Hitbodedut, you're secluding yourself and you're using writing, art, music, or a form of communication with God, right? Write a letter to God. Create a drawing inspired by a divine attribute of God, or sing a spontaneous, prayer. One thing, for example, that I like to practice is sometimes I have no words to express, what I feel or anything like that, and I just start making music with my mouth, and that, it connects me with the Creator and all that at that moment. It's kind of like I have no words, but I'm letting some kind of energy flow within my emotions, within my mind and my body, in order to connect to the divine attributes of the Creator somehow. Make sure that when you do this, you channel your emotions and thoughts into tangible expressions of connection. I remember when I was in New York, a lot of Hasidic members of the Hasidic community, they do that as they walk. They're like they're basically doing nigudim, and then nigud with their mouth and things like that. That's a form of meditation as well as you're walking, but in this type of meditation, you're secluded, you're doing it by yourself, but you have no way of expressing with words what you feel and things like that. So make sure that you can put it in writing if you have the words, but you don't want to do that. Sometimes it's as simple as writing down the word shalom, whether it is in Latin letters or Hebrew letters, and just looking at it, gazing at that word shalom, and that be enough, right? Others is just as we would say, you use guitar. I have 3 guitars in here, and just play music, like modern musicians would say, you're jamming, right? But you're jamming here in order to connect with the creator. And music becomes a form of communication with the creator, okay? Or art, start drawing something that has to do with one of the attributes of the creator, and that also will connect you to the creator. Some people just draw the Jewish star, again David, and then they write the word shalom in the middle, and that becomes some kind of like a mandala in which they're bringing the attribute of peace into their lives. But the emotions have to be there, the thoughts have to be there, and they should be tangible expressions to have that connection, okay? So remember, for Hitbodedut, we need to make sure that you set a time. So what is the best time? Early morning or late at night are often ideal for quiet reflections. Early morning because most people are sleeping. Late at night because most people are going to sleep or are sleeping, right? Find solitude. Choose a space where you feel safe and undistracted. Also, be consistent. Regular practice deepens your relationship and connection with the Creator. Also, be honest. Speak freely as you would to a close friend or confidant. Do not judge yourself, okay? But be honest. And don't rush. Allow your thoughts and feelings to emerge naturally, okay? With this, we're gonna finish this lesson, and then we're gonna go and into the other techniques in more depth. Make sure that you take notes of this and start practicing. It's just no perfect practice, until you start practicing. The best practice or perfect practice is just starting. Even if you don't know what you're doing, eventually you'll see that you will start your connection. Like I said, in my personal experience, my first introduction to meditation was with Hitbonenut, which is the last technique that we're going to be talking about. But Hitbodedut was the next one, and for me, it's the one that works best for me. We're going to talk about all the other techniques, and some of you might find that those techniques might be your preferred techniques, or you can mix Hitbodedut with, let's say, Hagah, Zamar, or other techniques that we're going to be talking about also in the future, okay? So I'll see you in the next lesson. If you have any questions, you can ask through www.receivingtheupperlight.com in the contact, or you can ask below in the comments. And I'll see you in the next lesson. So I hope this lesson has been a list of some kind of inspiration for you to start your spiritual path on Kabbalistic meditation techniques. I'll see you next time on lesson number 4.